Okay, we are recording. And I'll start the commercial.
Support for Wrong About Everything comes from Minnesota's credit unions. Credit unions are locally based, member-owned financial cooperatives that return earnings to members through higher savings rates, lower loan rates, and reduced fees. Visit mncun.org for more information.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Wrong About Everything podcast. I am GOP strategist and Twin City Sugar, Brian McDaniel.
And I am Minneapolis cultural correspondent Allison Nessie, and we are
Wrong About Everything. I want to just start off by apologizing a little bit. We've been a little erratic with being able to get together and do the podcast and post. It's been the week before the first week of session, and then the first week of session. So we apologize a little bit, and we appreciate you finding us either wherever you find your favorite podcast, or hopefully on YouTube, where you can see our shiny little faces. But I would like to not welcome you to the Minnesota Credit Union Network studios, deep within the recesses of MBC Studios. Allison and I are remote today, but we appreciate you following along, and we do appreciate the Minnesota Credit Union Network. Ryan Smith and the gang over there, they take good care of us. I had a banking issue this morning. Was able to call my credit union, got it fixed up right away. So very much thank you to them. And I also want to thank our producer, Gabe Noah, who is pushing the ones and twos in the other room. Allison.
All right, it's time to thank other sponsors. We'll start with the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association. Since 1952, the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association has been helping licensed beverage retailers in the state of Minnesota with information, resources, educational programs, and government affairs services designed to promote and protect their business. All our member retailers understand that with the MLBA, you're not alone. And I just visited an MLBA retailer right before this to stock up for Girls Weekend.
That is awesome. I also want to thank our good friends at Bradshaw and Bryant. Their entire team of attorneys and staff is dedicated to providing the legal advice you need, combined with the service and personal attention you deserve. If you have questions about how they can assist you with a personal injury, wrongful death, or criminal defense matter, do not hesitate to contact them. Consultations are free. Please contact them at 800-770-7008 or at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. Well, Allie, first week of session is over, and I always say every year is a little different, but every year is kind of the same. But this was the differentest year that I have had, and it started off with a little bit of collegiality. It started off with people's heads, hearts, and words in the right spot. What were your takeaways from the first day of session?
Yeah, so each year when they come back, they gavel in around noon. There's usually not any committees scheduled for the first day. But this year they gavelled in the House and the Senate. There was a large welcome back for Senator Hoffman as he walked up the stairs. There's a very grand, gorgeous marble staircase that leads up to the Senate chambers. So he walked up the stairs with Minnesota Patrol, and he walked into the chambers to a standing ovation and a lot of happy tears to that he was back and present and ready to serve another session in the Minnesota Senate. But then after the Senate adjourned, they went all of the senators went over across to the next wing, to the House of Representatives, where they joined the entire House on the House floor to do a memoriam for Speaker Hortman. And it was really beautiful. It was really emotional. It was very draining. The big chamber dinner was Tuesday night afterwards, and everybody was just kind of emotionally drained from the day. But there's a lot of different ways that the honoring Melissa Hortman could have gone, and I think it was done really well, really beautifully. Every single member, every person, staff and member was given a single rose, which they placed on Speaker Hortman's desk as they exited the chamber. So her desk will remain kind of roped off for all of session. They're not going to fill that seat this session. So, and Chief Clerk Pat Murphy will keep the commitment to keeping a fresh bouquet of the most beautiful roses that he can find that week sitting on her desk. So.
Well, and what I liked about it was it didn't feel forced or performative. And I know people listening or people who kind of see us out either on Almanac or at Issue or wherever we are, the Republicans and Democrats, they fight. And that does happen. But also, we're part of a very small club. And we have to work together even when we don't like each other, even when, what we're trying to achieve is the two diametrically opposed ideas. But Melissa Hortman had something that not everybody has, which is respect. People respected her. They didn't always agree with her. They might not have even liked her. Republicans or Democrats could be in that category, but you're not going to find anyone who speaks of her or her memory out of disrespect. And one thing too is that I also like that when they speak about Melissa Hortman, they also speak about her husband Mark, and when they speak about John Hoffman, they talk about his wife Yvette, because these were things that didn't just impact the people who signed up for it. This impacted their family tragically, and then certainly hope prevails for sure. So it was the first day of session, very nice. Allison and I were at the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce dinner, which happens usually on the first night of session, and it is a big event. It's a big event, and there were thousands of people there. Is it fair to say thousands? Certainly a lot.
Like it.
Yeah, it felt like a ton, and the whimsy, I think, is gone. I hope it comes back at some point, because here's the thing: politics is important. Politics is serious. Politics can be a ton of fun. But this year, it just walking into the building, we're going to talk about some more, you talk about how the building itself has changed. But walking into the building, there's not the first day of school jitters, or how people usually are very happy to see somebody that they haven't seen since the spring, but it just doesn't feel that way. It feels like Republicans and Democrats, lobbyists and staff were just looking to get through this year, and important things will be discussed, but right now it just does feel off.
Well, these are not whimsical times, dear friend. I think the mood is reflective of the kind of traumatic last 8 months that just Minnesota has experienced, and lawmaking. I agreed. It can be fun, but these are not fun times, and the issues that the legislators are being asked to work on by their constituents are really challenging, heartbreaking, heart-wrenching issues. And there's just and there are so many things that they cannot do. And I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats. There's so many things they can't do, and I think they feel almost a little helpless too, and that kind of adds to the mood that we're all feeling. I do hope that. I hope our society can become a little bit more fun and whimsical, and I truly think that the mood of the Capitol reflects what everybody's dealing with right now, and it's almost, I would say, too much.
Well, and with the assassination of Speaker Hortman, I kind of think we've reached peak horror, the worst case scenario. But on top of that was all of the ICE activity, and I just don't. I think we would feel this way even if we didn't have the ICE activity. That just piles on. I think that this is just. I wish I felt it was going to be a turning point. It's not yet, but that has to come. I always say somehow the 60s became the 80s. So something will flip the switch and we'll get disco back or something like that. But we're not there yet. And the physical building itself is different. Now, one thing that I've always really liked about the Minnesota State Capitol is it's extraordinarily accessible. Not just to us. We can get anywhere we need to go. We can meet with anyone we want to meet with. We'll call people and they'll call us back. It's not a lobbyist thing. It's accessible to the people. And many state capitals have a lot of security, have metal detectors, have, kind of an armed presence there. And up until this tragic summer, we did not have that. Excuse me, we did not have things that kind of were putting the people, the constituents, the regular folk at a distance from their elected members. We can't live like that anymore. So we do have now, they have reduced the number of doors that you can go into and out of. They have metal detectors and screening equipment at many of the entrances that are open, and you have to have a ticket to actually get into committee, which is more just annoying than anything else. But we have to get used to it, and I throughout my career have probably been the loudest person speaking against these types of things, but even though it didn't happen at the Capitol, we can't deny that we are in very violent times, and we cannot just trust that that the members themselves are safe, staff, lobbyists, the public. I hope that we can get to a place where there could be maybe a little happy medium on some of the issues, but for the most part, the screenings. All of that, the looking for weapons, all of that is here to stay, and it's not going to change.
Yeah, I frankly welcome the weapons screening. I went to the Texas State Capitol 2019 and in Austin, and I walked in and it was like going through the airport. It was and I was like, if Texas has, more screening, what the heck? So I'm okay with it. I actually, the first time I went through the screening was Tuesday morning, and I was right next to and with Colin Hortman, Speaker Hortman's son. And there was just, who, by the way, is one of the strongest, and Sophie too, absolutely. But Colin has taken more of the public facing role as was speaking for the Hortman family. But it's just kind of, it just hit me, we're walking in with him to honor his mother. And for the first time that I walk into the Capitol, we have a weapons screening, which, by the way, has been very slick. And I want to give a huge shout out to the team of Capitol Security who have made these changes kind of quickly. They got it up and running in the last week. Obviously, they've been planning a long time before that. But it's been a lot easier than I think anyone anticipated. And so it's been very slick. I like it. I'm totally okay with it. And that is the world we live in right now.
Well, I don't like it. I've accepted it, but I want to.
That's really big for you. That is big for you.
That is big for me. I mean, I'm dumb, but not stupid. This is. I get why this is happening, and I also want to give a shout out to Capitol Security and the State Patrol, because they're not TSA agents. They're not angry to be there. They're not mad at us for trying to access our Capitol, the Capitol. I found them to be very helpful, very understanding, and very congenial. So kudos to them for that.
Yep.
You might say, well, now that they have weapons screening, did they find any weapons? Yep.
I watched them on Wednesday morning find a weapon.
Yes, they do have weapons. So they have found a little over a dozen guns, but if you have a valid permit to carry, you can bring your weapon with you. You just have to make sure you have the proper documentation with you and be able to prove that you are a licensed carrier of the firearm. And none of the guns that were not confiscated, none of the guns that were detected were of an illegal or nefarious variety. They did find a fair amount of knives, though.
A lot of knives. A little too many knives.
You don't really get a permit to carry that knife. So I'm sure that it was honest mistakes. But shout out to anyone who's going. If you got your gun, bring your permit. If you got your knife, leave it in the car.
Yep. Knives, nunchucks can't come in.
Nope.
No. Yes, the gentleman that clearly forgot that he had a knife in his pocket. But they would not let him in with it. He was seeing if he could hide it behind a garbage can, but security quickly said, "No, sir, you must. It must be outside of the building." So that actually, so the Capitol has the old like letter chutes for mail, and he tried to open that and stick the knife in it, and I was like, "Oh, sir."
Was it a regular person or was it a lobbyist or staff?
It was the public.
Okay. Yeah.
It was the public.
Oh.
So
I have not seen that, but yes, it's different. It's different, and it should be different. And our world is different. Our state is different. Our jobs are different. But the world, the state, and our jobs do go on. And kind of after that first day of togetherness, we did then start having regular committee meetings, and bills are getting drafted and bills are getting introduced, and we're sitting in committee, and it's at some point it is going to be a little business as usual. So what are your takeaways from kind of the first week of actually doing work?
yeah, I actually had a bunch of hearings this week, which was great. A lot of folks that we work with are leading on issues, particularly around the impacts of Operation Metro Surge in the state. So we had the DFL, if they had the gavel, when they had the gavel in the House in those committees, because they pass. For those who do not get the pleasure of watching this on a daily basis, because the House is still tied 67-67, all the committees are tied. They each have 7 DFL members, 7 GOP members, and then there's a co-chair. They have a co-chair model, and they pass the gavel back and forth each committee hearing. So it depending on whether it's a DFL has the chair or the gavel, or the GOP has the gavel, and then that chair of that day gets to select what the bills and the issues they'll be focusing on. So a lot of the hearings this week in the DFL House, when the Democrats had the gavel, were focused on the impacts of increased ICE presence, and across the board, though, not just on housing. So the housing focused on rental assistance. The Economic Development Committee focused on this impact to small businesses and the revenue losses there. Education committees focused on the impact in the schools. So it's just like across the board, each committee was around ICE. And that sparked not the most bipartisan conversations within committee, I will say. I spent a lot of time in the Housing Committee, and that was actually quite collegial. The bills that they were hearing did not pass. They've stalled out a committee at 7-7, but the conversation was respectful. I would not say that was consistent in every other jurisdiction that was listening to testifiers and people's impacts around ICE. So it got off to a pretty partisan, it felt, start, even though I know that the impacts of ICE officers actually there are a lot of Republicans who have been very troubled by especially the detainment and seemingly like the detainment of U.S. citizens and arresting U.S. citizens with no probable cause, which we've talked a lot about on this podcast. So But last year, because they had to pass a budget, we don't have that pressure this year. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to pass a bonding bill. They don't have to pass a policy bill. The state government is funded through June 30th next year. So there is a little less requirement for the DFL and the GOP to work as well as they did, frankly, all things considered, this year. Also, obviously, the DFL very traumatized by the loss of their leader, and so we're going into session with a lot of baked in trauma and sadness, and it's completely changed the dynamics as to be expected. But that was quite apparent on day one, which was just Wednesday this week.
It seems like a month ago.
Yeah.
Sure. So the DFL, the DFL agenda, in addition to, all the regular parts of, of actually running a government, is a lot of ICE activity, where they can go, what they can do, what they can look like when they're there. Also, a lot of things around the regulation of firearms. I don't think people are expecting those things to pass, but I think also that with everything that's happened, the trauma that you just referenced, that is not something that the Democrats are going to let go unexplored. For the Republicans, the Republican agenda can be summed up with one word: fraud. And that was shaping up to be this was going to be the fraud session, and it still might turn into that. But with the Operation Metro Surge, that kind of like took a lot of the starch out of the fraud discussions, and so Republicans are trying to bring it back to that. We know that the fraud is real. We know that it is extensive. We know from the Optum report that there are definite vulnerabilities in our system, and those things need to be rooted out and fixed. Now, and someone might disagree with me a little bit, but when this first started popping up in earnest in 2025, I think the Democrats at first were a little slow to catch on with it. And at first, we're trying to kind of downplay it. They're not doing that anymore. There's some debate, obviously, about the enormity of the fraud, but even at the low end, it is enormous. And I think that the Democrats have really kind of read the room a little bit, and they're no longer, trying to make excuses, or for the most part, trying not to make excuses and that. So I do think in a session where not that much is going to get done, that's something that kind of tightens up our fraud detection will happen. Except I was a little, and let's talk about it, I was a little confused by how different the debate on the office of the Inspector General is in the Senate versus the House. In the Senate, which is controlled by the Democrats, last year, the OIG bill, which is what we call it, Office of Inspector General, passed 60-7. Almost nothing passes 60-7 in the Senate. So that was really kind of an affirmation that they were on the same page on one way to help root out the fraud, detect it, and all of that stuff. It did not come up on the House floor in a traditional way, but it did come up this week. But there were, in committee, there were kind of shenanigans with it a little bit, where there was a delete all amendment that made the bill quite different than what had passed in the Senate. And I'm not 100% sure it was offered by the Democrats. It did not pass. As with most things now, it died on a 7-7 tie without much debate, which I didn't necessarily love. But what is the purpose? Not to put you on the spot, but what is the purpose of bringing forth an amendment that is not agreed upon, and then trying on social media to make it look like, look, the Republicans voted against the Office of Attorney General? I don't think that really is going to be a believable argument or fly.
Well, Inspector General, not Attorney General, because Republicans definitely would have taken that vote, Brian. Just kidding. I don't have the best answer. I wasn't in that committee and conversation, and so much happened in 48 hours this week. And um, uh, so I don't, again, I don't exactly know why, but unless, the DFL and the author wanted to put forward uh, more of a framework of how they would like the Inspector General office to be to be framed up and how and function and be appointed by, etc. For the purpose of sparking starting the conversation. I think it's just we haven't quite figured out the best, and from the GOP and the DFL too, like there's not a lot of trust, frankly. So working on bills, some are really good at working on bills with their counterparts, and then some are less willing to work on the bills with their counterparts and would like to make a public statement and put into the public narrative a proposal. So I think it was more about a statement and what the DFL wants, as opposed to a substantive attempt at passing a bill out of committee that day.
I think it was a little too cute by half. But kind of what happens within the building is very different than what's important outside the building. Sometimes I think people want to see a result, but how the sausage gets made is not anywhere near as interesting to them. Now, moving on to some federal stuff.
Yeah.
Which was, well, it's interesting to us. Hopefully it's interesting to other people. But in fact, it's funny that this happened this week, because one of the things I remarked earlier in the week is, where are all the experts on tariffs all of a sudden? Because everybody was an expert on tariffs and knew, they talked about them at great length. And then obviously it's because, the ICE activity was a little bit more present and a little bit more serious. But the Supreme Court, the conservative-led Supreme Court, struck down President Trump's, sweeping tariffs, and it's going to be real interesting these are the global tariffs, not the specific ones on specific products, but it's going to be real interesting to see how does the president and Congress, how do they react to this?
Well, the president has reacted, and to the point where I was listening on CCO. They were just streaming his presser, and they ended streaming it because there were too many inaccurate falsehoods being stated. So they just kind of turned it off. So
slowly backed out of the room.
He slowly backed out of the room. To be clear, he's not taking it very well, which is just shocking.
Sorry.
Yes. And, he had some inflated statistics, some inaccurate statistics of how many wars he's ended already through tariffs and international trade policy. But he was not happy with with the betrayal of his hand-selected Supreme Court justices. So
he's used to John Roberts thwarting him, but Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch went along with him this time.
They're actually, I have appreciated their willingness to be independent thinkers on a few cases, actually.
If Javier were here, he would not give SCOTUS credit. He thinks they're bought and paid for. But one of the things, maybe some of them, but no, I'm just, as an attorney, I'm just someone who believes that at the end of the day, they're not, they might agree with the president, they might agree with Congress on some of these things, but that they're not doing anything out of any fear or sense of obligation to them. And there have been lots and lots of attempts by President Trump to do things that the Supreme Court has said no. They haven't said no to everything. That's not their job either. But this is one of those things where when you get a party or a belief system that is willing to kind of police their own a little bit, that gives me a lot of faith, or restore some faith that I wish I still had, in our institutions. When the House passes something that the Senate doesn't go along with, or when the Senate does something that the House doesn't do, that's the way it's supposed to work. And I like when it does. And with SCOTUS on this is showing that they are independent thinkers, and I think that this is something that every action with Trump has a reaction, and the reaction, I'm sure, will be very bigly. This was something where the Supreme Court, I think, did their job.
Yeah, as a Democrat who's grasping at the hope of the framing of our Constitution withstanding this administration, it was nice for the Supreme Court to exercise its powers as an independent branch of the government. So I'm, very small things bring me greater amount of joy than they used to. So, way to go, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. But I do want to say, like, this is not the first time that they have, quote, like, gone against Trump, and I appreciate that.
All right. Well, should we go to plugs?
Sure, because I don't have anything to plug. So
that's not true, because I was on the Al Travis show today, and which I'm on, maybe every other Friday. But you're on the Al Travis show even more than me.
I'm taking a pause because my slotted time is right smack dab in the middle of multiple House and Senate hearing committees. So we got to take a little pause for session until we find a time that works. Because Brian's my boss, I want him to know I put my job first.
You did. You should tell your boss that before we're on the air. But that's fine. That's fine. on air production meeting. Well, I'm still on. For the time being, Amy and I kind of go back and forth on the Al Travis show every other Friday. We have our own segment called Building Momentum, and I always appreciate being able to talk to Al. Also, every Tuesday, you can find Amy and myself on the Bob Sansevier show, and we like doing that as well. And I don't have too many other plugs, except that I'm going to be doing a little bit of comedy at the beginning of March. I'm going to be at the New Hope Cinema Grill, Cinema Draft House. It's got different things. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be featuring there, so it'll be a longer set. So if you've ever told yourself, hey, you know what? Why haven't I seen Brian McDaniel doing some comedy? This is your next best opportunity to do that. And I hope you come out. If you Google it, you can find where the tickets are. I'll bring it up again on the show many, many times. But March 7th, I will be doing Big Boy Comedy, and I'm very much looking forward to doing that. Let's do some spanks and thanks. Why don't you go, Allison?
I will go. All right. So my thank is to frankly, to some accountability in the Epstein files with former Prince Andrew, now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, was arrested this morning, and he was the first royal to be arrested in, I don't want to get it wrong, but I want to say it was like 400 years or something. And I woke up to that New York Times notification on my phone today. Today, the New York Times notifications were Prince Andrew arrested and Supreme Court strikes down tariffs. So not a terrible news day. But I'm just thanking the palace for not continuing to cover up a terrible, horrible, harmful person in their family, because this is actually very new for the royal family to not hide or harbor or protect a family member. But obviously, I think it is quite clear that the crimes committed, being a pretty well-known pedophile and raping children, are indefensible. And King Charles and Prince William too have been very, very direct in their distancing. They took away his title, they took away his funding for what he did, and they also complied with all investigations. And as King Charles said, let the law play out. So I want to thank the royals for not repeating 400 years of history, because I can assure you, Prince Andrew is not the only criminal that has been a part of the royal family. So there's just always been a lack of accountability, the monarchy being above the law, and not today, and not for these heinous actions by him. And I look forward to seeing for him to be seeing his day in court. All right. And on to my spank. My spank is for Katherine Hudson. For those who may not be longtime listeners, first-time callers perhaps, I tend to spank Katy Perry, aka Katherine Hudson, because I am not a fan of her music, of her trip to space, of the way that she talks about social issues, like everything. I shouldn't have said music. Teenage Dream was a bop, downhill ever since. And I just find her to be really out of touch and annoying, which brings me to my spank today about multiple headlines. Not that Katy Perry is pregnant, that she's having a baby, which I don't care how much I dislike somebody. Babies are a gift. That is wonderful. But it's the media circus around a potentially having a baby. And, so I continually spank her. Maybe, though, the one thing I might give her a break on this potential public discussion about maybe having a baby is potentially that she wants to experience what Canadian healthcare can provide mothers, which is a year off of maternal leave and fully funded healthcare. So maybe she could become a spokesperson for that, and then I might change my tune and never spank her again.
Well, it might not. I hope Katy Perry isn't going to Canada and using public resources to pay for her leave and her babyness, because she got money. She got money. You don't need to do that.
Her whole career I shouldn't say, her whole career has been on leave since Teenage Dream.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Well, my spank is going to be to Representative Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who has popped up on our show more than a few times, and she's getting a lot of attention right now as a potential presidential candidate on the Democrat side. But she kind of had a little bit of a fumble this week. Marco Rubio, who's a potential Republican candidate for that same office, was in Munich, gave a speech that was largely very well received. One of the things he talked about was cowboy culture and its originations in Spain. And Representative Ocasio-Cortez kind of said, well, actually, it was the indigenous Americans and African slaves who came up with cowboy culture. And that's not true. There weren't even horses in America, and they died out thousands and thousands of years before the Spanish conquistadors came to the Americas, bringing with them all the bad things that we know about, but also cowboy culture from Spain. So I think Representative Ocasio-Cortez just got a little over her skis, trying to embarrass and admonish Marco Rubio, but it came off as dumb. So she is spanked. You look like you have something to say.
I honestly, I thought you were going to spank her for her response to protecting Taiwan, because that's pretty bad too.
Yeah, no.
I mean, objectively, not great. So, I didn't know where you were going when it wasn't that. So, all right, yeah.
I don't know if I've ever said cowboy culture on the air anywhere before. So now it's a first for me, and so much fun. My thank, and I don't know if Gabe can put that up, but I want to thank the FDA because they have recalled a honey energy supplement because they found erectile dysfunction drugs in there. And so I want to thank them for doing their job. But it kind of surprised me because I just thought I really liked honey. But it looks like that was not a natural reaction to the work of the bees. So,
If there are any HR consultants listening to this podcast, please reach out to me. Thank you.
who's HR at your company, Allison?
Or my HR at your company. So if there are any HR consultants listening to this podcast, please reach out to me.
Well, as my firm's HR, it sounded fine. But with that, I am the honey loving GOP strategist, Brian McDaniel.
And I'm constantly can't stand Katy Perry, Allison Nessie.
And we are
Wrong about everything.
Take us away, Gabe.